What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we are going to do a full story video. A full story video is when I sit down, take a bunch of videos that tell one overarching storyline, or they have a certain kind of theme together. And today's full story is really more a theme rather than one overarching storyline. You see, in the late 1980s, Marvel gave us a lot, not a lot, but they gave us 3 different titles where you had the X-Men fight against other characters in the world of Marvel Comics. So for example, Spider-Man versus Wolverine, Fantastic Four versus X-Men, Avengers versus X-Men. You had the X-Men going up against some of the most popular characters around that time in Marvel Comics to see how would they do against those kind of characters. And so I want to take those 3 story arcs and put them together into one big video. And so with that being said, here is today's full story video. X-Men versus, well, not everyone, but the most popular characters of the 1980s for Marvel. So in the opening pages of Spider-Man versus Wolverine, we pick up with Wolverine and his friend Charlie in Berlin being surrounded by a bunch of different Russian spies. Now there is something I do want to point out. This part of the story does take place a long time ago. We have no idea how long ago, but we do know it is in the past. But the reason why Charlie and Wolverine is being surrounded by all of these different Russian spies is because Charlie is a freelance who works for different secret government agencies across the world. So KGB, CIA, the list goes on and on. Of course, Charlie did piss off the Russians and they want to kill Charlie. Wolverine, being that good friend, wants to protect Charlie from the Russian spies. And so you have Wolverine killing every single one of these Russian spies off left and right, except when Wolverine finishes, Charlie is gone. Charlie does leave a heart-shaped necklace, but Charlie is gone, and Wolverine's wondering, is Charlie okay, and will he ever see Charlie again in the future? So we then jump over to Spider-Man as we see him just swinging around town, minding his business, having a quiet night. Except he does see some girl running down the street screaming her head off, and he is wondering what in the world is going on. This girl tells him that 2 shop owners have been hurt or something is wrong with them. And so that makes Spider-Man go to that shop really fast because he actually knows the shop owners pretty well. Except when he gets there to the shop, he finds 2 dead bodies. Of course, the 2 dead bodies are the shop owners. Each of them have a single shot in their head. And so it was a professional hit. And the question is, who did it? But you do have Spider-Man take a picture to hopefully take to the Daily Bugle to show them, look what happened. This is newsworthy. It should be told. And so you do have Spider-Man go to the Daily Bugle. He does share the photos over to the Daily Bugle, and hopefully they will use the photos as a way to spread news on what happened to the 2 shop owners. Except then you have J. Jonah Jameson come in and tell Peter Parker that he has a new assignment for him and he needs to go to El Salvador. And so you do have Peter and JJ go into the office to discuss more of this new assignment. Except that is when you have Ned Leeds come in and tell JJ they need to talk. It's very serious and they need to talk privately. Ned Leeds is one of the reporters at the Daily Bugle. But for Ned Leeds to come in and tell JJ they need to talk privately, it means it is very serious. And so with Peter Parker leaving the Daily Bugle, you do see him go over to Aunt May's house because he is late for dinner with Aunt May, Mary Jane, and also some other people. Now, at this point in Marvel Comics, Mary Jane and Peter Parker are not dating yet. They did date in the past. Of course, things did not work out, but they are good friends, and she knows that he is Spider-Man. But honestly, this part of the story is to remind us Mary Jane is very important in Peter Parker's life. And so after Mary Jane and Spider-Man leave the dinner over at Aunt May's house, they do go to a movie, and it's kind of like, okay, these two can still spend time together, even though they do have feelings for each other, and she knows that he is Spider-Man. But right after they leave the movies, that is when Peter Parker's spider sense goes off to tell him something is about to happen. And so he makes Mary Jane leave while he go change into his Spider-Man outfit. Now he does freeze up for a hot moment because a homeless person saw him, and so he does freeze up. But unfortunately, with him freezing up for that short moment of time, there was a sniper out there. That is why his spider sense went off. That sniper found his target, killed his target, and now that sniper is gone. And so for Peter Parker, he's like, I failed. And just that quick, someone died or multiple people died. The question is now, who was the sniper? On top of that, the police officers think that Spider-Man was the one who kind of helped kill the person who got shot by the sniper. But he does leave with a lot on his mind. Now you do have Peter Parker go over to Mary Jane's apartment to have someone to talk to, because twice in one night he has seen somebody get killed. There was the shop owner, and now there's someone who got randomly shot in the middle of Times Square. And so for Spider-Man, he wondering, is he a good hero or not? He feels helpless. He feels useless. He's wondering what is wrong with him. And in the heat of the moment where he decides that he should probably give up being Spider-Man, when he leaves Mary Jane's apartment, he kisses her. And this is the point that really begins the process of Mary Jane and Spider-Man getting back together. The next set of pages, we see that Ned Leeds and J. Jonah Jameson are still in that private meeting, and they're talking about the dead bodies that were found at the shop that Spider-Man was at earlier, and the two people who got shot at Times Square once again where Spider-Man was at earlier. And the reason why they are talking about this is because all 4 dead bodies were Russian spies. And they all were killed by Wolverine's old friend Charlie. And for Ned Leeds, he tells us this is Charlie coming out for the first time in a long time, and he's going around killing Russian spies. And so Ned Leeds wants to go over to Germany to kind of do an investigation to learn more on why Charlie is coming out of hiding all this time later. And so JJ does agree to send Ned Leeds to Germany, but of course Ned Leeds needs a photographer. And who is that one photographer? That is Peter Parker. And this is the moment where Peter Parker is once again quitting on being Spider-Man. And so when he thinks he's about to leave for the night to go have some quiet time, of course, the phone rings and JJ says, Peter, you and Ned are going over to Germany tonight. Now we do pick up with Wolverine once again, and with the dead bodies popping up and being all over the news, Wolverine took that as a message from Charlie that Charlie is back out there in the world again, and Wolverine needs to go find Charlie. Except this does take place after the Mutant Massacre storyline for my X-Men fans out there. And so you have some X-Men telling Wolverine you need to stay, but of course Wolverine does not stay. Now, once Wolverine does get over into Germany, that is when he's being followed by some random muggers. These muggers are actually not that important. They were just following Wolverine to get some easy money. Of course, they did not. But when they do run away, they do run into some real Russian spies. And those spies killed off those muggers. Now, the reason why these spies are following Wolverine is because they're hoping that Wolverine can lead them to Charlie. Of course, they decide to walk away. But once they do, bam, they're both dead. And that tells Wolverine that Charlie was nearby watching over Wolverine, but did not confront him at all. But when Wolverine continues to go around the city hoping to find Charlie, he does walk by Ned Leeds and Spider-Man. And Wolverine does not know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, but he remembers Spider-Man's scent. And that tells him that kid right there, Peter Parker, is Spider-Man. Now you do have Wolverine wondering why in the world is Spider-Man in Germany for? And so he thinks that Spider-Man could be evil now. He could have turned evil and be working for the KGB. But either way, you do have Wolverine break into Spider-Man's hotel room and tell Peter Parker, listen, we don't have any time to deal with the whole process of you pretending to be someone else. I know you are Spider-Man. When you left your hotel room earlier, I came in here and found your spider gear. So I know you are Spider-Man. I need you to come with me so we can have a small talk. And this talk is more of Wolverine trying to figure out if Peter Parker does have a hand in what's going on with Charlie. And right off the bat, Wolverine can tell that Peter Parker is just really here to investigate. He has no connections to the KGB. But you do have Wolverine tell Peter Parker that he needs to leave. Go get Ned Leeds and leave before something bad happens to you. And so, of course, you have Peter Parker confused because he's wondering, why in the world did Wolverine confront me about this? How big is this situation that him and Ned Leeds are in right now? So for my Spider-Man fans out there, this is the moment we all know so very well. Because back in the 1980s, when they were making Hobgoblin, the question was, who is the Hobgoblin? Originally, it was supposed to be Roderick Kingsley, except at the last minute, Marvel changed it to Ned Leeds. Because this is the moment where Peter Parker walks into the hotel room to find Ned Leeds dead. And originally, this was supposed to be just Ned Leeds dying because Wolverine's friend Charlie's whole situation was getting too hot. And with Ned Leeds kind of investigating it, of course, it led to Ned Leeds being killed. The next video that we're going to do later on is going to retcon this moment and say Ned Leeds was killed because he was the Hobgoblin the whole time. So yeah, it was a crazy time in the 1980s to change from it could have been Roderick Kingsley to now it was Ned Leeds. And even after that moment right there, it gets even crazier. But you do have Wolverine coming in and saving Spider-Man at the last minute. And you do have Wolverine telling Spider-Man, you need to go home. Of course, when you do have Peter Parker kind of thinking about going home, he doesn't. He's like, I'm not going home. I need to figure out what in the world is going on because Ned Leeds just died. Ned Leeds is dead, and I have to go back home to JJ, Betty Brant, Ned Leeds' wife, Mary Jane, and tell everyone that Ned Leeds is dead. And so he decides to go to some costume store, pick up an off-brand Spider-Man suit so he can go out in the world to figure out what is going on with this Charlie person. Now, getting back over to Wolverine, this is the big moment of the book because you do have Wolverine finally being able to confront Charlie, to ask Charlie what in the world is going on. But we come to find out that Charlie is not just a friend to Wolverine. Charlie is more than a friend to Wolverine because Charlie is a woman. And it's a woman that Wolverine has some feelings for. And so, of course, Wolverine got another girl he's in love with. And of course, he does get some action on the side. And so we do get to see Wolverine spend some time with Charlie. They do go out to dinner somewhere. Except, of course, with her going out to a fancy restaurant, you have all these different hidden Russian spies wanting to kill her and trying to kill her in different ways. And so Wolverine and Charlie are trying to stay hidden and undercover and not trying to make a scene at this restaurant because they know they're being watched by a ton of Russian spies. But of course, that is the moment you have Spider-Man just bust right in, and you have every single Russian spies like, okay, gun blazing. Just shoot up Wolverine, shoot up Spider-Man, and try to kill her, especially because she's our main target. But after a couple pages, Charlie does escape without telling Wolverine where she's going to go to next. And now Wolverine and Spider-Man have to fight these Russian spies, find a way out, which they do. And now they have to team up to hopefully handle this whole situation that Charlie has built. But also because Spider-Man made things a tad bit worse. Now this is the moment you have Wolverine finally telling Spider-Man what in the world is going on. And he tells us that Charlie, with her being a freelance, agent, whatever, she used to work for the KGB. She did a job, but the KGB wanted to kill her to keep that job a secret. Of course, she didn't like that, and so she went back out there and started killing different KGB members. And so now the KGB is trying to kill her. And Wolverine tells Spider-Man no government is going to protect her. And so right now, it's really just her on her own trying to kill off every single member of the KGB that was part of that last job she did for the KGB. And so you have Wolverine and Spider-Man trying to play catch up to hopefully find her and hopefully stop her as well before more people are dead. Except when they get to the last stop where Charlie was at, it's too late. She killed every single person of the KGB that was on that last job that she worked for them a while back. And Wolverine is now mad at Spider-Man because he's like, dude, this is your fault. If you didn't pop up, if you had stayed out of this whole situation, I could convince Charlie to leave enough alone. And there wouldn't be so many dead bodies all over this place. It is your fault, Spider-Man. And so, of course, you have the two of them go their separate ways. But Spider-Man is also angry at Wolverine because Spider-Man is just trying to help Wolverine out and also trying to figure out, was Ned Lee's death really worth it? We then get a moment where Wolverine is able to find Charlie. And this is a very sad moment because, again, Wolverine actually loves Charlie. He loves her. But she tells him, you have to kill me. Because if the KGB actually comes and get me, they'll now send more spies that was outside of the last job she did for them to come capture her. If they capture her, they will torture her. And she will hate that. And it's her telling Wolverine, just kill me. Kill me now. And Wolverine does stab her. And it's like, man, this is tough because it's a woman that Wolverine loves so much. But she did not die from that one stab. Except before Wolverine is able to go for the final blow to kill Charlie, the woman he loved, that is when Spider-Man does appear. And you have to remember, when it comes to Spider-Man, he will protect anybody. Even if that person has a high dead body count, like Charlie does, he will still try to save their lives. And so right now, he's like, what are you doing? You're trying to kill the woman you love. And so it does lead into Spider-Man fighting against Wolverine, living up to the title of this book, Spider-Man versus Wolverine. Because one, these are Marvel's two best characters. Most popular characters. I'm sorry, other fans out there. It was true back then, and it's kind of true right now that Peter Parker and Wolverine is really Marvel's two best characters. But anyways, with these two going back and forth, fighting against each other and showing off their different abilities, their different fighting skills, it's honestly a pretty cool fight. But at the end of the day, this story has to end, and it kind of ends on a messed up note, really. And so with their fight finally being over, you do have Wolverine leave, But then Spider-Man's spider sense goes off and he thinks that Wolverine is coming back for another attack. And so you have Spider-Man put all his strength in one last punch to hopefully smack Wolverine with it, but he doesn't. He punches Charlie right in the face. So now this woman has been stabbed, has been punched in the face. And it's like, oh my gosh. But then the KGB come there. They surround Wolverine, Charlie, and Spider-Man. Charlie is in Wolverine's arms. And Wolverine knows he has two options. He can go ahead and kill her and not let the KGB take her, where she'll be tortured for a long period of time. Or he could try to fight against them, but in the day, he might lose this battle. And Spider-Man might die. And so you have Wolverine just stab her to kill her. Charlie dies right here. Charlie never comes back again. But with that being said, it's so messed up because Spider-Man realized that he kind of did have a hand in helping Wolverine kill her, because that punch was hard right in the face. And the way the book closes down is where you have Peter Parker finally going back home to America, but with a lot on his mind, with being with Wolverine, with Ned Leeds dying, realizing that when he finally gets back home, he's going to have to explain to JJ what happened to Ned Leeds. Peter Parker is going to have to tell Betty Brant, Ned Leeds' wife, what happened to her husband over there in Germany. And then we kind of see him at the last page go to Mary Jane's apartment because he needs someone to talk to. But also, we're telling you right now, this is the moment where Peter Parker and Mary Jane rekindle their love for one another. But like I said earlier, in the next video, Ned Leeds' death does get retconned to tell us that Ned Leeds was Hobgoblin. And in that same story, we get a new Hobgoblin. Like I said, it was a hot mess. It was such a hot mess when Marvel was trying to tell us who was the Hobgoblin. But this is where we're going to end today's comic book video. So please hit that like button down below and subscribe. Also, if you have any suggestions on books I should read, well, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But I do hope you enjoyed today's comic book video. Later, guys.
What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Alright, so we're going to continue our coverage over X-Men comics as we work our way up to the Fall of the Mutant storyline. Now, the next book we have to cover is Fantastic Four versus X-Men. Now, when it comes to this crossover, it's really interesting because this was the first step of Chris Claremont removing Kitty Pryde from the X-Men. Let me explain. So, when it came to the Fall of the Mutants era of X-Men comics, Chris Claremont felt like it was about time to get rid of some old characters to bring in some new characters. And matter of fact, when it came to the X-Men at this point, they already gained 3 new members: Dazzler, Psylocke, and Longshot. Now, when it comes to Kitty Pryde, yes, she will no longer be part of the X-Men, but she'll be able to join a brand new team coming down the road, better known as Excalibur. And so this was just a building block to get to that point right there, to introduce another X-Men book. Now, with that being said, remember, when it came to Kitty Pryde, she got seriously injured to the point where she is unable to turn off her phasing ability. Now, that's a huge problem, and the reason why, because sooner or later, she is going to completely disappear. Her molecules are breaking apart, And so the X-Men must find a way to save her by turning off her phasing ability before she no longer exists. And so getting into today's video, we do pick up with Franklin Richards having a nightmare. Now, when it comes to Franklin, in this nightmare, he sees his father, Reed Richards, being the reason why both the X-Men and the Fantastic Four are both dead. Now, we're not told how they died, but apparently Reed is responsible, and apparently he knew a day like this would come. Now, here's the thing. Because you have Franklin try his best to stop his father from doing something that could technically turn him completely evil. But to Reed, he tells Franklin, "No, son, you cannot stop me. Nobody can stop me. Like I said, I knew this day would have come sooner or later." And so you have Reed pick up a book. Now, this book is actually his old college journal. But apparently Reed, ever since then, knew a day like this would come. Now, as soon as Reed picks up the book and he opens it, a beam of light shoots out of it and begins the process of turning Reed into Doctor Doom, to say that down the road, possibly, Reed is going to be the reason why the X-Men and the Fantastic Four die. And if that does happen, there's a possibility that Reed might become the next Doctor Doom. Now, like I said though, that was a dream. So you do have Franklin wake up, but he wakes up scared and he wants to be comfort. And so he goes over to Reed. Now, like every almost classic Fantastic Four book, when it comes to Reed being in his lab, he he does ignore his family. And so you have Franklin coming to his father looking to be comfort, and you have Reed say, "Hey man, sorry, I'm busy. Go find your mom. Matter of fact, I'll call her and tell her to take care of you." And so he does that. And so you have Susan take over for Reed. And you have Franklin tell Susan what he saw in that nightmare. Now for Susan, she's kind of like, dude, it's a nightmare. Calm down. You know what? Everyone has weird dreams. Don't worry. Those dreams will not come to life. Except you have Susan going through some old boxes and she finds Reed Richards' old college journal. And as soon as she shows Franklin, he begins to freak out because in his dream, he saw that book be the reason why his father turned into Doctor Doom. Now, when it comes to the X-Men, well, they're currently at Muir Island with Moira McTaggart and also Magneto as they try to find some kind of way to save the life of Kitty Pryde. And so they're wondering what they can do before the possibility of Kitty no longer being around. But while you have the team just hanging out outside or inside trying to find different ways to save Kitty Pryde, well, that is the moment where you have Magneto contact the entire team because apparently he got word that Reed Richards might have some kind of device that could really help out Kitty Pryde. And so you have Magneto say, "Hey, I'm going to call up Reed Richards." Now for the X-Men, they're kind of concerned, will the Fantastic Four come? Because Magneto used to be a bad guy for a very long time in X-Men comics, only recently being turned into a good guy. And so to the rest of the world, they still look at him as a villain. And so the X-Men are very worried that Reed might say no because of Magneto. We then jump over to Dazzler and also Longshot because right now they're in the middle of the ocean trying to find a missing fisherman. And honestly, it does not take them that long to find him, except this missing fisherman is going to be very important for the next chapter of this story. But getting back over to the Fantastic Four, you have Reed wanting to spend some time with Susan, except when he tries to, be that good old husband, well, she turns around angry at him because she read his college journal, and what she read could possibly bring the end to the Fantastic Four. We then jump over to She-Hulk. Now remember, around this time, She-Hulk was part of the Fantastic Four. Honestly, I would say the Fantastic Five, because you have Ben Grimm, you have the Human Torch, you have She-Hulk, you have Susan, you have Reed, like you have 5 people on a 4-person team. Either way, let's not forget, She-Hulk is a lawyer, and currently she's working on something when it comes to Magneto. That right there is not really important, because while she's working on that case, well, she is confronted by Ben Grimm, and you have the 2 characters have a conversation about how they feel about Magneto. When it comes to She-Hulk, she feels like everybody deserves a second chance. And when it comes to Magneto now being part of the X-Men, there's a good chance that he's actually good. Except for Ben Grimm, he believes that no bad guy will actually turn good. They always stay evil no matter what. And so for him, he says he can never trust Magneto at all, no matter what Magneto does to show that he is a good guy. Now, while you have the 2 characters talking to one another, they do hear a loud explosion, and a building is falling apart. And so you have She-Hulk and Ben Grimm try to save the day. Now, you also have Magneto appear as well, alongside with the Human Torch. And you have all 4 characters work together to save this building. Now, here's the thing, because now with Ben Grimm seeing Magneto in action, is him kind of beginning the process of looking at Magneto in a better way. Either way, once you have our heroes being able to save the building, they do ask Magneto, why are you here? He says he needs to talk to Reed Richards. And so we do see our heroes go back over to the Baxter building. Now, when they do arrive, you do have Magneto asking Reed for his help to hopefully use his new device to save the life of Kitty Pryde. Now, here's the thing. Reed, he does say yes, but he does look depressed. And the reason why? Because he's currently arguing with his wife Susan about what she had read in that journal. But here's the thing, because whatever happened in that journal begins the process of putting doubt in the mind of Reed Richards. And that's not normal, because when it comes to science, Reed is very confident about almost anything in science. But now he's beginning to have doubts about his invention being able to help out Kitty Pryde. And so even though he does say yes, he's kind of like, it's going to fail possibly. Now, Susan does not go with the Fantastic Four because, well, she's upset with her husband, but somebody got to take care of Franklin. Now, on their way over to Muir Island, you have the other members of the Fantastic Four realize there's something wrong with Reed. But the question is, what? And so you have Ben ask Reed, hey dude, are you okay? Now, you have Reed tell Ben, yeah, not really, because I'm having doubt that my device can actually help out Kitty Pryde to save her life. Now, you have Ben tell Reed, why are you having doubt? Like, dude, almost every single time when it comes to science, you are always right, except one time. And of course, that would be the cosmic rays. Now, as soon as Reed hears that, it kind of tells us that whatever was written in that journal that ticked off Susan had to be about the cosmic rays that gave our heroes their abilities, that made them the Fantastic Four. And so because of that, he's now having doubt right now if he is able to save the life of Kitty Pryde. Either way, they do arrive to Muir Island. But right after they do arrive to Muir Island, you have Reed tell everyone there that he is sorry. And they're kind of like, sorry about what? And Reed says, I cannot help you. I cannot do this. My device is not going to work. Sorry for wasting your time. Now, when it comes to the X-Men, they get very upset because they're wondering, then what's the point of you being here? You came all the way out here with your device to help us, and now you're telling us you can't? Now, Reed does not tell our heroes why he cannot help them. It's just him saying, no, I cannot do it, because he feels like his device might actually kill off Kitty Pryde. Either way, you have the X-Men get very ticked off, especially Wolverine, who wants some answers, who begins the battle between the two teams. And so as we dive into the second chapter, well, we pick up with Wolverine attacking Reed. We are now getting Fantastic Four versus the X-Men. Now, here's the thing though, guys, because all of this could have had been avoided if Wolverine had just sat down and tried to talk to Reed and figure out why Reed no longer wants to help out the X-Men instead of trying to attack Reed. And so with Wolverine attacking Reed, well, Ben Grimm, the Human Torch, and also She-Hulk, they're kind of like, hey, you can attack our man like that. Now we have to jump you. And so while you have those people trying to jump Wolverine, you have the rest of the X-Men want to fight against the Fantastic Four as well as a way to protect Wolverine. And so it's kind of like, oh my God, Wolverine, this is all your fault. This whole fight is all your fault because you could not sit down and actually talk to people. Now, as the fighting goes on, Storm, she does get burned by the Human Torch, and that burn is somewhat important for this story arc. You also have Rogue being able to use her abilities to absorb the powers of Ben Grimm, and so now Rogue is technically a she thing. But either way, Psylocke arrives and she realizes all of this mess is because of Wolverine being a hothead. Now, there is something I want to talk about, and that would be Franklin Richards. See, around this time, he had the ability to project himself in other locations as long as he was asleep. It was kind of like a psychic projection. Either way, when he does that, he is able to kind of be there, but no one else noticed that he is actually there. And so while you had the X-Men and the Fantastic Four fighting against one another, he had once again project himself over to the island to only see the two teams fighting against each other. And that scared him. And the reason why? Because of his first dream, the idea of his father turning evil. And he feels like that battle right there is the first step of his first dream actually happening. And so when he wakes up and he cries out for his mom, you do have Susan doing a great job trying to comfort her son. But when he tells her everything he saw on Muir Island, thanks to his, again, psychic projection, well, she's kind of like, this is all Reed's fault, because now it seems like, one, our child is having a hard time, but two, what she had read in that journal could lead to the end of the Fantastic Four. Now we have to jump over to Longshot, Dazzler, and also Havoc, because they're also on Muir Island, but they're inside the actual lab. Because remember, earlier Dazzler and Longshot went out of their way to find a missing fisherman. And so they're trying to see if he is going to survive. Except you have Havoc tell them, hey, the rest of the team right now is fighting against the Fantastic Four. What in the world is going on? We have to go help out our team. And so they leave. But as soon as they leave, the man they saved earlier wakes up. Except we kind of find out it's not a man, it's some kind of machine. And he's all like, okay, it's now time for me to begin my plan. But getting back outside, you do have Moira McTaggart and also Storm being able to calm both sides down. They kind of say, Wolverine, this is all your fault. The reason why both teams are fighting against each other because you're being a hothead. Now, once both sides do calm down, you have Storm ask Reed once again, please, can you help us out? Can you save Kitty Pryde's life? And he says no, because again, he's now beginning to doubt himself as a scientist. Now, right after he says that, you then have that robot man comes out, and that robot man begin to change into some kind of projector, because this robot belongs to Doctor Doom. And so with the robot now being a projector, it begins to project Doctor Doom, allowing him to have a conversation with the Fantastic Four and the X-Men. Now, when it comes to Doctor Doom, he says, listen, I just got word that you guys need someone to help you out with your Kitty Pryde problem. What if I tell you guys I have a machine that's very similar to Reed Richards' machine? What if my machine can actually help her? Now, for our heroes, they are quick to say, yes, we will go to you for help. Now, when it comes to the Fantastic Four, they tell the X-Men, hey guys, don't do that, because even if he does help you out, you are going to be in his debt. And I'm telling you right now, you are going to hate working for that man or working with that man. But for our heroes, the X-Men, they don't care, because again, Kitty Pryde is on the verge of actually dying. And so right now, they're down to do almost anything to save her life. And so even though you have Reed just saying over and over again, the X-Men are not listening. In matter of fact, you have Moira McTaggart tell Reed, this is my island and you failed us. So go ahead and go right now. And you have Reed and the Fantastic Four having no choice but to go ahead and leave and watch the X-Men accept Dr. Doom's offer. And so we do jump back over to the Fantastic Four at the Baxter building. Now, this is them having a family meeting. And this meeting is not really a good one. And the reason why, because when it comes to the rest of the team, they have now all read what was in the journal of Reed Richards. And we kind of find out it has to deal with the idea of their origin. Let me explain. So when Stan Lee wrote the Fantastic Four, our heroes were going to travel in space. And he told his team, my rocket should protect us from the cosmic rays. We already know that was actually incorrect. They were hit by the cosmic rays and they became the Fantastic Four. Well, in this what could be a retcon, Reed knew the entire time what was going to happen to him and his team. And matter of fact, he intended for him and his team to get hit with the cosmic rays. And here's the reason why. Because Reed did a lot of studying over human evolution. He wanted to know what would come next for the human race. Now, he did read over a lot of papers that were written by Charles Xavier that basically stated the next step was going to be mutants. And that was a huge thing for Reed. He wanted to prove that was not going to be the only next step of evolution for the human race. There could be many different ways that humans may evolve. And that is where cosmic rays got involved. He wanted to prove that cosmic rays could possibly help humans evolve as well. And so when it came to Stan Lee's origin for the Fantastic Four, it's now saying, no, that is wrong. Instead, Reed knew what would happen. He intended for him and the rest of his team to gain powers, to use them as proof as there is another way for humans to evolve. And this is a huge retcon, except you have Reed trying to state that he didn't write this. If he did, he does not remember. But the rest of the team, they don't believe him. They're kind of like, nah, man, you knew. You hid that secret from us, and that's messed up. And so it does seem like to be the end of the Fantastic Four. And so as we dive into the third chapter, we do pick up with the X-Men now in Latveria. Now, while being there, you do have Dr. Doom trying to help out Kitty Pryde, but first he must help out Storm. And the reason why? Because Dr. Doom has a huge crush on her. When it comes to Dr. Doom, he has a lot of respect for Storm. to the point where he has been trying to get with her for a very long time. Matter of fact, in one of her first appearances in X-Men comics, the X-Men came over to Latveria, and even then Storm was all like, Dr. Doom seems to like me. And he was kind of like, yo, I really do like her and I want her by my side. And so currently you have him just trying to fix up her burn wound that she had received from the Human Torch in the last chapter. But we have to shift our focus over to Kitty Pryde, because remember, this entire storyline is about Dr. Doom trying to help her and turn off her phasing ability. Either way, when it comes to Kitty Pryde, she's at the point where she wants to commit suicide. She wants to go ahead and let her powers take her away. And the reason why? So the X-Men will not be in Dr. Doom's debt. And so she does begin the process of trying to kill herself off. Now, Franklin Richards is also there as well, because remember, every single time he falls asleep, he is able to psychic project himself somewhere else in the world. And once again, he's doing it right next to Kitty Pryde. But remember, nobody can usually see him. Only he can see the people around him in his projection form. And so he does see Kitty Pryde about to commit suicide. And he tries his best to stop her, to the point where he does wake up her pet dragon, which then warns the rest of the X-Men what she is trying to do. Now you have Psylocke trying to communicate with Kitty Pryde with their minds, saying, hey, listen, don't do this. We're okay with Dr. Doom helping you. He can help you. He can save your life. Please don't kill yourself. But again, she does not want the X-Men to be in Dr. Doom's debt. Now, while she's about to commit suicide, Franklin Richards is able to yell out loud, to the point where now other people can see his projection. And so he cries out to her to say, hey, please don't do this. Please stop. Like, the X-Men are gonna win. You're going to be healed. The Fantastic Four is not going to end. It's him crying and hoping that everything works out for both teams. And Kitty Pryde, seeing him cry, made her realize that it's most likely not a good idea to commit suicide in front of him, but at the same time, she kind of got hope thanks to Franklin, because Franklin does believe that everything is going to work out. We do jump back over to the Baxter building, and the reason why, because we pick up with Reed Richards telling Gus that he does not believe what he has saw in his journal. Like, yes, it is basically written in a way that he usually writes, but he does not remember writing that. And so he's now beginning to have doubt about his own memory. He feels like maybe he did write this. Maybe he did plan to make the Fantastic Four. And when the rays hit him, he had possibly forgotten. It's him kind of wondering what is real and what is not real. Now he wants to sit down and talk to his wife, but he can't. He feels like he broken her heart, because again, he changed her life as well without her permission. And so instead, he goes to check in on his son, who is currently going through something at the moment, with the whole idea of him just seeing Kitty Pryde about to commit suicide. And so you have Reed being there for his son and being able to have a great father and son moment. And while you have the two characters having this moment, Susan sees the two hanging out, and that is when she realized, okay, I don't believe that Reed wrote that in his journal many years ago. Somebody else did. But the question is right now, who? But we jump over to Ben Grimm, who is currently moping around the city. Now, when it comes to Ben Grimm, the reason why is because he feels like his best friend purposely turned him into the Thing. And so for Ben Grimm, he feels betrayed, but also the idea that he has no one to love. Now, for the hardcore fans out there, when it comes to the Fantastic Four, let's not forget, around this time, Alicia Masters was not dating Ben Grimm. she was dating the Human Torch. And so Homeboy has no one to love, and he feels like he is a monster. Now, the only reason he's able to overcome these feelings is when he goes out of his way to save a young girl in a very bad car accident. And once he's able to save her, and you have the mom and the daughter show a lot of love towards him, he realized that even though he may look like a monster, the people don't look at him like that. They look at him as a hero, and so he is able to continue on. Now, the ending of the third chapter is really more the idea of the Fantastic Four coming back together as a team. You had every single member realize why they are part of this team, but also you have Reed Richards still having doubt about his device that could have been used to help out Kitty Pryde, because he feels like there's some errors when it came to his design. But he's now hoping that Dr. Doom will be able to overcome the errors that he had made to hopefully save Kitty Pryde. But at least on the bright side, the Fantastic Four came back together. They all have forgiven Reed, but they all believe that Reed did not actually write that journal, that somebody else did. But again, the question is who? Now, when we jump into the fourth chapter, we do pick up with Kitty Pryde. Now, is Kitty Pryde just patiently waiting for Dr. Doom to do something that could possibly save her life? Now, that is the moment where she is confronted by Franklin Richards, and again, this is just him psychically projecting himself into the area. Now, when it comes to Franklin, he does tell Kitty Pryde the Fantastic Four are on their way to help her out, that his father may have found a way to actually save her life. Now, when it comes to Franklin, he also mentions the idea of his nightmare at the very beginning of this story, because remember, he believed the book that was found was going to lead into his father possibly turning into some kind of evil version of himself, or become just as evil as Dr. Doom. And because the book has been found, it's Franklin saying, I'm very worried about the idea of my father turning evil, or possibly Dr. Doom winning. Either way, you have Kitty Pryde and Franklin being able to kind of talk to each other to comfort each other, because they're both going through different kinds of things. Now, we do jump over to the Fantastic Four, who are right now using their jet to head over to Latveria. Now, on their way there, you do have the Human Torch explain the origin of Reed Richards and Dr. Doom. Not completely, but to kind of give us the details of why Dr. Doom hates Reed so much. And we kind of find out that these two characters used to attend the same college, except as soon as Reed had met Victor, they became rivals in different kinds of ways. Now, for Reed, I won't say really he looked at Victor as a rival. It was more that he kind of respected Doom because how smart Dr. Doom was, and matter of fact wanted to be his friend. But for Victor, it was more of, no, I don't like you. I don't like the idea of someone being as smart as me. And so again, the two became rivals. Now, there was a project that Dr. Doom was working on, and Reed tried to tell Doom that he had made a few mistakes. But because Doom believed that he was smarter than Reed, he ignored what Reed said. But unfortunately, Reed was right, and so Doom experiment fell apart. And so ever since that day, Dr. Doom had a bunch of hatred towards Reed Richards. We did jump over to Magneto and Storm. Now, this is the moment where you have the book kind of give us a quick reminder of something very important about Magneto. Because remember, around this time in Marvel Comics, he was the father to Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, and also Polaris. But around this time, you have Magneto beginning to hint at the idea there was a fourth child who came before all three of them. Except that child died. There was a fire at his home, and unfortunately his powers were way weaker back then, and so he was only able to save himself and his wife, but unfortunately not his daughter Anya. And so she died in that burning building. And so ever since then, it really did bother Magneto a lot. Now, before he's able to explain more about his daughter, well, you have Dr. Doom project in front of him saying, listen, man, you are out here using your magnetic powers, and that's ruining my whole entire experiment that could possibly save Kitty Pryde's life. So please, stop using your powers until I am able to save your student's life. Now, before we are able to move on, well, that is the moment where you have the Fantastic Four appear. Now, remember, the Fantastic Four is only here to help out the X-Men, to see if Reed is able to actually fix the machine that he was trying to use originally to hopefully save Kitty Pryde's life. But the problem is, though, the X-Men, they're on edge because the last time they saw the Fantastic Four, well, it was a battle. But on top of that, Reed let them down. And so you have the X-Men wondering, why in the world are the Fantastic Four here for? Now, once again, it's thanks to certain members of the X-Men, Rogue and Wolverine, where it does lead into another battle. Because at first, when you do have the Fantastic Four land, you have Reed try to talk to Magneto about the idea of having another attempt at saving the life of Kitty Pryde. But because Wolverine and Rogue are both hot-headed people, well, they begin to attack the Fantastic Four, who did try to defend themselves. Now, this fight does go on for a few pages until you have Franklin Richards stop everybody to say, guys, look at y'all. You are fighting each other, and right now, Kitty Pryde needs all of us to make it through. So please, put your differences to the side and try to help one another to save her life. And so this leads into the moment where you have Reed explain what was wrong with his device and most likely what's wrong with also Dr. Doom's device. And we kind of find out that their devices are not made in a way to actually help Kitty Pryde out. It could possibly make things worse for her. Because remember, right now, her molecules are breaking apart to the point where she might disappear completely. And so when it comes to their devices, well, it might actually make things a whole lot worse, speed up the process. And so it's Reed saying, Doom, I realize what is wrong with your device because, again, is similar to mine, except Reed cannot really explain what is actually wrong. He's having a hard time trying to figure it out. Now, this is what Dr. Doom wanted. And what I mean by that is, it technically tells us right here, it was Dr. Doom who wrote that in Reed's journal, just in case for a time like this, where Reed will have doubt himself about how smart he truly is. And so right now, even though Reed realized what is wrong with Dr. Doom's advice, Reed cannot fix it though. And so it's Dr. Doom saying, you know what, Reed? Go ahead and ask me, or we can have Psylocke probe your mind to get the answers we all need. And so for Reed, he hates the idea that it comes down to this moment right here. To reverse the effects of their machine on Kitty Pryde, he might have to ask the help of Dr. Doom. But at the same time, he does not want to do that. He does not want to give Dr. Doom something that he may love. And so we see the X-Men freaking out because Kitty Pryde is getting worse at a faster rate. You have everybody staring down Reed. You have Reed panicking, and you have Dr. Doom just looking at Reed like, yes, I finally won. Except at the end of the book, a few hours later, we kind of find out they were able to reverse the effects of their machine. And now they have begun the proper healing process for Kitty Pryde, meaning that sooner or later, she should be able to go back to normal. Just like that. Literally, just like that. Now, you have Susan confront Dr. Doom, and the reason why, because she was able to realize that it was Dr. Doom who wrote in Reed's journal many years ago as a way to set up a moment like this. So Dr. Doom has been waiting for a moment like this for a very long time. And of course, it finally came. Now, the book really ends on that note right there. Kitty Pryde is now in the process of being healed and most likely being a member of the X-Men, are technically on her way out to join a new team. But with that being said, this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later. What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. All right, so we are going to continue our coverage over X-Men comics as we work our way up to the Fall of the Mutant storyline, and we do pick up with Avengers versus X-Men. This was the first time these two teams had fought against each other in a somewhat big event, a huge crossover. Now, this is also, I say personally, the trial of Magneto. And let me explain. So, when it came to Magneto in the early days of Marvel Comics, he was known as the most deadliest villain for the X-Men. But after Uncanny X-Men number 200, well, he turned into a good guy and actually replaced Charles Xavier. He became the headmaster of the school. He began to lead the X-Men. It was him trying to be a better person to actually help out the mutant race. But the problem is, though, the rest of the world still looks at him as a villain. And so even though he has been doing a lot of great things here and there, unfortunately, the world still hates him. And so that's why I say this book is really more of the trial of Magneto. The main reason why you're going to have these two teams possibly fighting against each other. And so getting into today's storyline, we do pick up with the Avengers first. Now, around this time, the Avengers were Black Knight, Captain America, Captain Marvel, Monica Rambeau, Dr. Druid, She-Hulk, and also Thor. So a very unique group of members of the Avengers. Either way, when we do pick up with our heroes, they're trying to deal with a meteor shower. Different pieces of a meteor is about to crash into different populated areas of the world. And so you do have our heroes go out of their way to protect the United States. Now, the only reason why they're only protecting the United States because Black Knight basically tells us that when it came to his research, he realized the other pieces of the meteor that is going to fall in other countries like Russia or Australia should land in areas that are not really heavily populated. Matter of fact, there should be no one there at all. So those areas should be okay. But either way, you do have the Avengers come to this one small town, go to their Kmart actually, and try to protect the area from the pieces of the meteor. Now, once they're able to do that, they begin to kind of research or look over one piece of the meteor that had crashed on top of their Quinjet. Now, at first, they realized that the piece that crashed on the Quinjet is very heavy for She-Hulk to actually lift. Now, once they're able to lift it, they also realize it's very magnetic and wondering how in the world is this meteor heavily magnetic. And so you have Black Knight being able to kind of cut off a piece of the meteor to only find metal that has been buried inside the actual meteor. And the question is why? Why is there pieces of metal buried deep inside this piece of meteor? But unfortunately for our heroes, they have no idea where this meteor came from and why there's metal inside of it. Now we have to jump over to Russia. Now around this time, it wasn't really called Russia. It was called the Soviet Union. But either way, over there, you had another superhero team better known as the Soviet Super Soldiers. Now, of course, when you had the Soviet Union go away and turn into Russia, they then changed their name over to the Winter Guard. But at this time in Marvel Comics, they were known as the Super Soviet soldiers. Either way, they're trying to deal with a different kind of problem. See, at a train yard, you had a lot of trains being derailed, causing a lot of problems here and there for our heroes to jump in and actually handle. Now, when it comes to the Soviet super soldiers around this time, you had characters like Vanguard, Ursa Major, Darkstar, Crimson Dynamo, and the Titanium Man. Now, each of these characters are able to come together, but then you have the Crimson Dynamo say the reason why all these different trains got derailed because a piece of the meteor flew by. For some reason, it had released a huge amount of electromagnetic pulse, which of course threw everything off. And so you have our heroes wondering what is currently going on with that piece of meteor. And so you have all the heroes leave to go research it. Now we have to jump over to Muir Island. And the reason why, because that is where the X-Men were staying around this time in Marvel Comics. Because remember, the mansion is technically no longer safe, with the idea of Marauders might possibly come after them. But on top of that, the X-Men have 3 team members who are currently injured: Nightcrawler, Shadowcat, and also Colossus. And so with those 3 friends on the sideline, and also with the idea of Marauders looking for them, the X-Men had to come to Muir Island. They're also trying to trick the world into believing that they are dead. And so around this time with the X-Men, you have Storm, Wolverine, you have Dazzler, you have Rogue, you also have Longshot as well. Oh, and we cannot forget about Havoc, the brother to Cyclops. Now, like I said earlier, Magneto is also part of the X-Men because, again, after Charles Xavier stepped down, Magneto took over. Now, while you have the X-Men trying to relax on Muir Island, they also have a TV nearby them. And this TV is technically talking about different news reports that are happening around the world about the different pieces of the meteor crashing in those different areas. But you do have all these different reports talking about the idea that these different pieces were all magnetic. Now, as soon as you have the reporter say that, you have Magneto realize, oh my God, it's my old base, Asteroid M. Now, the last time we saw Asteroid M, it was destroyed when Warlock was traveling over to Earth. And so for Magneto, he believed his old base was actually gone. But now, come to find out, it never was completely gone. And so those pieces are crashing all over the Earth. Now, it's Magneto saying he has to go around and find some certain pieces because of his own personal reasons. And so he just leaves without actually telling the X-Men. But Wolverine saw him leave, and so you have Wolverine tell the rest of the team, hey, Magneto just left and we have no idea why, which possibly mean it could be him getting into some kind of trouble. Now, you do have the X-Men realize that the recent news report is talking about the different pieces of the meteor, which of course was Asteroid M, his old base that was on a meteor. And so you have our heroes realize that if Magneto is out there searching for different pieces of his old base, it could possibly be a recipe for disaster. We then jump over to the Avengers. Now, when we do, it's really more of the Avengers telling us that they got word America, Russia, Australia, and also some other countries as well are all working together to go after Magneto. The news reports that he saw was actually used by these countries to bring him out into the open so that they can actually kill him. Because like I said at the very beginning of this video, Magneto was still looked at around his time as a bad guy, as a villain, even though he had joined the X-Men and tried to be a good guy to help out his people. The world still looks at him as a bad guy because he had committed a lot of crimes. He has killed off a lot of innocent people. And so these different countries are coming together to go after him, to ambush him and then assassinate him. Because they all knew if word got out that pieces of his old base is crashing around the world, he would be very intrigued to find those pieces. And so it made the perfect time to go after him. And so to the Avengers, this is a bad thing, because the Avengers and us realize around this time in Marvel Comics, the world is beginning to turn against the mutant race even more, trying to make new laws in almost every country to possibly get rid of them. And so for the Avengers, they realize if they kill off Magneto, not them, but these 3, 4, or 5 countries, it could really help people out there who truly hate mutants a lot to get more people on their side, because Magneto was such an evil person. And so you have the Avengers say, we have to help him and also protect him. And so we do pick up with Magneto going to a certain location to see if he is able to find a piece of Asteroid M, except that is the moment where he is confronted by, well, the Avengers. Now, the Avengers are not just only here to protect him from being assassinated, but also here to say he deserves a fair trial. We're going to take him to a courthouse in front of a jury to give him a fair trial. But again, they first have to protect him. Now, as soon as they say that, the X-Men arrive as well. Now, the X-Men are only here because they were following Magneto. And so you have the Avengers trying their best to explain things over to the X-Men, except they get cut off again when you have the Soviet super soldier team arrive as well, because we come to find out when all these different countries agreed to work together to go after Magneto, they wanted to use this group right here who would be down to kill off Magneto. America realized they could not trust the Avengers to kill off someone. So why not go and get another group of heroes? Now, when She-Hulk steps in front of everyone to protect them from the Soviet super soldiers, well, that group right there took She-Hulk's move as a threat, because also she is trying to protect Magneto. And so for them, it's kind of like you had just declared war against the Soviet Union. And because we're that team from there, you declare war against us. So now we're going to fight against you to get to Magneto. And so you now have a 3-way battle for just one guy. And so as we dive into the second chapter, we do pick up with everyone fighting against each other. Well, honestly, that is not true, because you do have the X-Men being able to sneak away while you have the Avengers fighting against the Soviet super soldiers. And so while those two groups are just battling it out, you have the X-Men just being able to grab Magneto and get on their Blackbird and fly away. So honestly, this is a great moment for the X-Men to regroup, but to also have a conversation with Magneto. But we also get the chance to see the other two teams, the Avengers and the Soviet super soldiers, go against each other and who would possibly win. I'm going to tell you right now, the Avengers win easily. Now, once you have the X-Men being able to regroup with one another, you do have Magneto kind of explain to the X-Men why he was trying to find the different pieces of Asteroid M. And we come to find out that there's different kinds of equipment on the different pieces of the asteroid that could be used for evil things. And so he wants to make sure they don't fall into the wrong hands. Now, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, his main concern is that those kind of weapons could be used as a way to hunt down mutants. And because Magneto is trying to do a better job in protecting and helping mutants, he wanted to make sure the weapons that he had created is not used against his own
people. Now, after telling the X-Men that, you have Magneto tell the X-Men this is something he must do on his own. And so he just leaves once again. So you have Magneto being able to locate the original piece that he came looking for in this area. And once he's able to find that piece and begin to look around this piece of the asteroid, well, he begins to have flashbacks of the days where he was the main villain of the X-Men and all the different problems that he had caused. And so this is him hoping that once he's able to get rid of all these different kinds of dangerous weapons, but to also get rid of Asteroid M for shortest time, that he'll be able to bury the past where he was a villain. Now, unfortunately, while he is trying to get rid of this piece of Asteroid M, well, he's then confronted by the Avengers once again after they were able to defeat the Soviet super soldiers. And so it looks like we're about to get round 2 with the Avengers and Magneto. Now, luckily for Magneto, the X-Men had arrived to help him out. Even though the X-Men are kind of tired of him just running off and trying to deal with different problems on his own, he's still a mutant. He's still part of the X-Men. And Charles Xavier believes in Magneto. And so those 3 things is just good enough for them to actually help out once again. And so this time we do get the X-Men fighting against the Avengers, a full-on battle. But here's the thing, because when it came to Magneto finding that piece of the asteroid and being able to recover the different equipment from that piece of the asteroid, he has set up a bunch of charges to make sure the entire place blows up, to make sure that any equipment that he may have left behind cannot be found. And so while you have the Avengers and the X-Men fighting against each other around this piece of Asteroid M, you have Magneto say, hey, we have to leave right now because that place right there is set to blow up. Now, the ending of the second chapter, we do see Magneto being able to put around the area a magnetic field to protect everyone who was near the piece of the asteroid M that was set to blow. And so with him doing that, everyone was able to survive the explosion. But the Avengers were completely knocked out. And so when they wake up, they realize the X-Men were able to sneak away once again, get back on the Blackbird, and now they can leave to possibly go back home. Except they have no idea that a member of the Avengers were able to sneak onto the Blackbird, and that would be Dr. Druid. And when it comes to Dr. Druid, he's using his psychic abilities to hide his appearance, to hide him being there on the Blackbird. And so for the X-Men, they have no idea he is there, but he is there to technically gather intel on why the X-Men are trying to protect a war criminal, but at the same time where the X-Men are going. And so as we dive into the third chapter, we do pick up with the super Soviet soldiers. And this is them kind of getting back on their feet after being defeated by the Avengers. But they also realize the X-Men are gone, and so is the Avengers. Now the X-Men are flying away in their black jet, and you do have the Titanium Man being able to shoot a beam at the Blackbird the X-Men are currently using. Now it's not a powerful beam, it was very small, but that small damage to their jet is going to grow over time, and sooner or later the X-Men are going to have to land their jet and find a different way to get around the world, to get away from the Avengers and also away from the Soviet super soldiers. Now that leads us over to the X-Men, who still have no idea that Dr. Druid is currently on the Blackbird. And matter of fact, in the middle of their flight, you have Dr. Druid try to call up the rest of the Avengers to basically tell them, hey,
I'm with the X-Men, they have no idea I'm here, and sooner or later I should be able to gather enough intel but also a location of where the X-Men are going. Except in the middle of that call to the Avengers with his psychic abilities, well, Magneto realized that Dr. Druid was on the jet because Magneto has a very powerful mind. His mind is well trained to protect itself against psychics like him. And so you have the X-Men say, okay, we have to drop him off somewhere else so that the Avengers cannot find us. But then you have Storm say, we have to land his jet very soon. Somebody did damage to our jet, and that damage is only getting worse. And of course, you already know that was the Titanium Man. And so the X-Men do land, but they make sure to drop off Dr. Druid somewhere else before they sneak away. And so we jump over to Singapore. Now the reason why, because the X-Men are hiding out here because this was the nearest location where they had to land their jet. And so Wolverine knows someone out here who could possibly give them a way to transport Magneto to a secure location. And so while you have our heroes just making sure there's no one following them and going their separate ways, we do pick up with Havoc. And you have Havoc currently being followed by a character known as Vanguard. Now, Vanguard is part of the Soviet super soldiers group. And matter of fact, he is a mutant like his sister Darkstar. Now, when it comes to Vanguard though, he has the ability of energy redirection, force field, energy projection, and flight. So he could be a very powerful threat if he was able to use his powers correctly. And originally, he could only use his powers when it came to him holding his hammer and also another piece of item as he crossed his arms. And that was the only time he could access his powers until he finally learned how to use his powers. Either way, he was able to find Havoc, who was trying to hide in the crowds of Singapore. And so you have Vanguard trying his best to basically capture Havoc, but to only be stopped by Wolverine and Rogue. And that tells the X-Men they have to get the heck out of Singapore now, because now the super Soviet soldiers are here and they're about to try to capture the X-Men all over again. And so we do pick up with the X-Men currently on a boat, heading towards a secure location. Now on their way there, you do have Wolverine tell Storm while Magneto is not there that he believes that Magneto is most likely hiding something. Because Magneto did go to one particular location to destroy just one piece of Asteroid M. Now all the equipment that was inside of there was also destroyed, but Magneto did pull out his helmet. What was so important about that helmet of his? And so it's Wolverine saying he feels like Magneto is still hiding something and we have no idea what it could possibly be. Now you do have Storm try to confront Magneto, but unfortunately you have Magneto tell Storm, I have to leave because you guys are actually innocent. I'm not. The Avengers and also the super Soviet soldiers are only coming after you to get to me. If I leave you guys behind, then they will no longer come after you guys. Except the problem is they have arrived already and they are about to attack the X-Men on the boat to get to Magneto. Now, when it comes to the X-Men, they're not trying to attack these super Soviet soldiers because one, they're on a boat, and two, if the boat gets badly damaged, then most likely everyone would drown. Also, the innocent people who are on the boat who is just minding their business. And so you have the X-Men really trying this time to at least talk to the other group to hopefully get rid of them. But the problem is though, Crimson Dynamo is not trying to listen. And matter of fact, when Wolverine tries to stop him without actually attacking him, you have Crimson Dynamo go ahead and attack Wolverine, which means it leads into a battle between the X-Men and also the Soviet super soldiers. And this is a problem because they're on a boat. And so all their different kinds of attacks is just doing damage to the boat to begin the process of the boat sinking into the ocean. Now, luckily, the Avengers have arrived because the boat was calling out for help. And so you have the Avengers go out of their way to actually help the X-Men get all the innocent people off the boat, but to also get the Soviet super soldiers off the boat as well to save everybody. And it's kind of like, okay, the Avengers realize that the X-Men are not truly enemies. It's this third-party group right now who's just causing a lot of problems for no good reason. And matter of fact, once you have the fight being done and you have everyone being able to get off the boat, you didn't have the Avengers just go at it on Crimson Dynamo because it was his fault a battle even started on the boat because he was being hot-headed, looking for Magneto. Except then you have all three teams realize Magneto is no longer there, which means that he had disappeared before the fight had even happened. So where in the world did he go to? But before we are able to find out, well, we kind of find out that, well, the Avengers are going to arrest Crimson Dynamo because technically it was his fault that boat basically sunk at the bottom of the ocean. And so he's getting arrested and will be taken away. But we come to find out that Magneto was able to sneak onto another boat that's currently going back to Singapore because apparently he's not done. He even says he has some unfinished business there to take care of, and then everything should be okay. And so Homeboy was able to sneak onto another boat and pretend that he was there the entire time, even though we know he wasn't. And so, as we dive into the fourth and final chapter, we do pick up with the Avengers paying a visit to the office of Mr. Ronalds. Mr. Ronalds is basically the leader of a special unit that was sent out by America to go out to Singapore and capture Magneto. And they're working alongside with the police force of Singapore to make sure Magneto does get captured. Now, when it comes to the Avengers, they want to know what happened to the other two teams after the ending of the third chapter. And we kind of find out that the Soviet super soldiers went back home to Russia, but the X-Men are currently being held against their will. And the reason why, because one, they were helping Magneto escape law enforcement, but two, because they are mutants. Now, when it comes to our Avengers, they're like, you can't do that. But their conversation does get interrupted when Mr. Ronalds gets word that Magneto has been seen in Singapore, and that means his special force team is about to move in. Now, when it comes to Magneto, he's still trying to be a good guy, still trying to make sure that he does not go out of his way and harm people if he needs to get away from law enforcement. But unfortunately, out of nowhere, he is surrounded by that special force team that was sent there to capture him. And they tried their best with all different kinds of weapons to capture him, but again, he's just too powerful of a mutant that he cannot be easily stopped. Now, while trying to get away, he is confronted by three other mutants, and that would be Lyco, Crawler, and Slider. Now, they belong to a particular group of mutants, but they were sent here to help Magneto get away. And of course, he does follow them. And so you have those three characters take Magneto over to a building that belongs to a new group of mutants, better known as the Mutant Underground of Singapore. In this one particular building, you have different kinds of mutants hiding here because now you have humans in all different parts of Singapore beginning the process of going after mutants to just get rid of them. And matter of fact, we saw that other countries as well. The human race is gearing up to go to war against the mutant kind. Now, with all that being said, the leader of this group is a character known as Light. And Light has the ability to know when someone is telling the truth or not. And so when they want to make sure that Magneto is actually Magneto, they ask him to say, hey, say your name and say you are him. And when he does, Light says, you are telling the truth. Now, when it comes to Light, he reminds Magneto of his early days. He's somebody who still believes that the human race should be killed off as a way to kind of make way for the mutants, because the mutants are being attacked by the humans too much now. It's time to get rid of the humans. It's time to attack them. Now, while you have Light giving out this speech, the base is actually attacked by that same special force team we saw earlier. Now they're here trying to capture Magneto, but now innocent mutants in this building are being hit left and right. Now Magneto is able to use his powers to defend himself and the others, but it really does tick off Magneto a lot that no matter where he goes, his own people are getting hurt. Now you do have Light and the other members tell Magneto to follow them as they go to their backup base. But when we jump back over to the X-Men, they are currently just sitting in custody, minding their business. Now, here's the thing. When it came to the Special Force arresting the X-Men, they didn't make sure to give the X-Men some kind of special equipment that could cancel out their powers. So really, the X-Men could have escaped anytime they wanted to. They were just hoping that they could do it in a more peaceful way. But unfortunately, the X-Men got tired of waiting, so they went ahead and busted out of their prison and left to hopefully find Magneto. And so you have Mr. Ronalds get very upset because the X-Men just broke free. And he asked the Avengers to go follow them, and the Avengers say no, because it seems like you have a huge agenda against Magneto, not because of his past crimes, because he is a mutant. We then jump back over to Magneto, and when we do, we see him and Lyco and a few other members of the Mutant Underground of Singapore go to their backup base, which is on a random boat. Now, I kind of want to focus on Lyco just real briefly, and the reason why, because Lyco has the mutant ability to find other mutants. That right there is going to be very important here in a moment. But you do have Lyco realize that Magneto is working on some kind of device. Now this device, he has been hoping to use this for a very long time, but unfortunately one person kept standing in his way. But that person is no longer on Earth. So now he has the ability to finish it and actually use it. And so once he does, we kind of find out he has the ability now to teleport people over to him. And so when the X-Men and the Avengers are confronting one another, Magneto is able to tap into the minds of both teams and say, hey, listen, I will bring you guys over to me. Matter of fact, I just want Captain America from the Avengers, but I want all of the X-Men to come here to me. And out of nowhere, those few people are teleported over to where Magneto was at. Now, we kind of find out what else the helmet could actually do. Matter of fact, the third and final ability is the most important one, because we kind of find out it has the ability to access the mind of every single person on the planet. But then Magneto will have the ability to erase all the hatred that regular humans have towards the mutant race, to hopefully finally bring peace to the entire world. Now, the reason why he could not use this in the past, because of Charles Xavier being a very powerful psychic, that he would be able to block the helmet ability of doing that. Because Charles believes in free will, that they need to actually make the humans believe that mutants are not bad. We can't force them, we have to guide them into a better decision. And so when it comes to Magneto, he's kind of like, I'm down to use this. And the only reason why? Because of Lyco, this young girl who is a mutant, but now she's being hunted by humans no matter where she goes. And that's not fair. Young mutants deserve the right to grow up in a normal life. And that is very, very huge. But here's the thing. Magneto wants to use the helmet on Captain America to see that if he does use it, will Steve Rogers change his mind towards Magneto actually using the helmet on the rest of the people of Earth? Because he does tell Steve, I want to use it, but I feel like it's the wrong thing. And Steve says, yeah, because again,
free will. So even though Magneto does use the helmet to hopefully erase any kind of hatred that Steve Rogers might have towards the mutants, which we're going to find out is completely 0%, Steve still says you cannot use that helmet because, again, free will. And so after that conversation, Magneto realized, okay, you know what? Steve is right. But on top of that, I'm tired being on the run. It's time for me to go ahead and face the charges that have been brought upon me. Now, this leads us into the court session, where you have the trial of Magneto actually go on. And we already knew where this trial is going to go, where you have all these different people basically talking bad about Magneto. The trial's not going in his way at all. Now, when it comes to his lawyer, it's going to be Gabriella Haller. Now, Gabrielle Haller is very important because she's the mother to Legion. She is technically the baby mama to Charles Xavier. Either way, she is a great lawyer. But no matter what she's doing in this trial, they're losing. They are losing this battle big time. And Magneto realized what's currently happening at the moment. That no matter what she says, no matter what he says, no matter what even the witnesses say, Magneto is still being looked in a way as a bad guy. Even though he has turned good and begun the process of trying to do good things to overlook his bad things in the past, he's still being looked at as a villain. But here's the thing, Magneto did some horrible crimes in the past, killing off a lot of innocent people who were just involved because of his master plans against the human race. So even though he did some good things, well, his bad things are even worse, way worse than all the great things that he has done. But the trial does not go his way, and so now Magneto has to wait until they declare what is going to happen to him. And so with this break, you have Magneto think of a game plan. Now, before we dive into Magneto's plan, I kind of want to sit down and talk about what Magneto is thinking here. What I mean by that is Magneto believes the Chief Justice Du Motier, the guy in charge of the entire trial, could possibly be a mutant. And the reason why Magneto believes that, because if Magneto goes to jail, that means the humans of the world would believe they have the right to go ahead and freely attack any mutants across the board, which could lead into a war, where then the mutants could use their abilities to defend themselves, to possibly erase the human race off the board. And so it's Magneto saying the Chief Justice wants to use me to start a war so that mutants could finally have peace. But the problem is there are going to be a lot of lives lost in that war down the road. That's a bad idea. And so you have Magneto call up Captain Marvel, Monica Rambeau, to go over to Singapore to find Lyco. And the reason why? Magneto wants to use Lyco ability, where again, she is able to see who is a mutant or not, use that ability to tell the world that the Chief Justice is a mutant and what his master plan is, and to hopefully have the trial be thrown out, but to also prevent a war, but to also show the human race that there are young mutants who will not have the chance to live a normal life because you humans want to go ahead and kill us off. That's not fair. And so he tells Marvel, go find her. She's the key to stop all of this mess. Except when Captain Marvel goes over to the base, to the underground mutant of Singapore, well, their base has been attacked because ever since Magneto got arrested, humans in Singapore got even crazier. They believe they have the right to do anything they want to mutants, that mutants do not have human laws to protect them. And so Lyco, she died. You're like, dang. And so Captain Marvel has to go back over to Magneto. But before she does that, she stops by Du Montier's office to listen in on his conversation to see if he is actually a mutant. When she does stop by Motier's office, she begins to hear a conversation he's having with someone else about the idea of starting a war. Because again, the humans are really big on killing off the mutant race. If Magneto goes to jail, that war would actually start. Now, when it comes to Magneto, he was wrong about Matier. Matier is not a mutant. He's a human who wants the war to start so that humans could use their weapons to eradicate the mutant race. And so for Captain Marvel, she realized that Magneto was half right, but still half wrong. And so she goes back over to Magneto to tell him what she had learned. Now for Magneto, he realized what he has to do here. He says, you know what? I got this. And so he begins to call for his helmet. Now, let's not forget, his helmet has the ability to erase any kind of hatred in anyone's mind towards the mutant race. And so once the helmet comes to him, right before his sentencing is about to be stated, he used the helmet to erase any kind of hatred in the mind of Matier to hopefully change the outcome of the trial. Because once you have the trial come to the closing part where it's time to see if Magneto is actually guilty or innocent, Matier says he is actually innocent. So all charges have been dropped. Magneto won the trial. He is happy like no other. But then he realized something. The other judges who were up there with Matier did not say anything at all when it came to him saying Magneto is free to go. He believed that the other judges up there would throw a fit about the idea of letting Magneto go, but none of them did. And so that is when Magneto realized he just got played, basically. They were planning on releasing him so that the humans could build on the hatred of a mutant getting free of no charges, being able to walk away without going to jail, to basically say there's a possibility the entire actual trial was fixed, which technically it was now because of Magneto using that helmet. And so the story ends on that note because now it's Magneto saying, I could be the sole reason why the war between humans and mutants may have begun. And this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later. Love y'all.